One of the most unique things about the most unique Paper Mario game is the fact that you get to play as not only Paper Mario, but also Paper Peach, Bowser, and Luigi. They each have a character-specific ability that's useful in combat and required to solve many puzzles throughout the game. On that note, can we beat the game with only Mario? No. This is a linear story-driven game where unlocking each character is a required progression event, but we can get a lot closer than you'd think. This challenge will instead track the minimum amount of times you have to complete gameplay as anyone besides Mario to beat Super Paper Mario, but when I say minimum, I mean truly minimum. We're not going to be doing any of that, oh, well, you have to cross this gap with Peach, so we're going to add one to the counter. This is a challenge run that will make extensive use of glitches and speedrun tricks to truly determine the fewest number of times you have to swap away from our main and only true hero, Mario M. Mario. For your viewing convenience, we can entirely skip Chapter 1 since you only have Mario for this whole chapter anyways. The only thing that I'll ask from you guys in exchange is subscribe? I try to avoid asking for subs at the beginning of videos because honestly it's pretty tacky, but especially if you're someone who's seen and liked multiple videos from me, then I really encourage you to subscribe because it helps out a ton with growing the channel. Anyways, immediately after Chapter 1 is when you unlock Princess Peach. First we have to play as her during this intermission where she tries to escape Count Bleck's castle, and then moments later we find her as Mario. This whole section is entirely story with just a tiny bit of walking, but we'll go ahead and count it because, I mean look, that's not Mario! And we are in fact pressing buttons to move the character. Sounds like gameplay to me. The game does force us to swap to her after the scene where she's unlocked, but we don't have to complete any gameplay and can immediately swap back to Mario. Her overworld ability involves floating slowly with her parasol, which is pretty unfortunate for us since Mario can't get nearly the kind of horizontal distance that she can. And sure enough, the second heart pillar, which is our next objective, is intended to be reached with a Peach hover. However, there is this stupidly easy speedrun trick where you can just grab a squiglet, throw it on this little ledge, and then bounce off of it to get to the heart pillar as Mario. And look at that, that was so simple. Surely we aren't going to run into any more issues with needing Peach for. Okay, so yeah, immediately upon entering 2-1, we get stuck. You're supposed to use Peach to cross this huge gap, and Mario can't even get close. After trying to boost across with enemies to absolutely no avail, I thought of two very different and very difficult solutions. The first one of them involves a life shroom, a single frame, and a dream, but the second one is more practical for a lot of reasons. Don't worry though, we'll revisit the life shroom thing later. The second option is to complete the entire Flipside Pit of 100 trials to unlock Dashel. Dashel is an optional pixel that gives you a run button, and this lets you jump way further than normal. Completing the Pit of 100 trials before obtaining Boomer though is a bit of a puzzle in and of itself. Every floor in the pit has a predetermined set of enemies that can spawn in random places around their room. They all have an equal random chance to be the one holding the key to the next floor. Now with only Mario and Thoreau, our combat options are really limited. Mario can only damage enemies by jumping on them, and there are many spiked enemies and these Cursia guys that can't be jumped on. Fortunately, on most of those floors though, they're accompanied by enemies that you can jump on, and the reason that this is important is because you can pick them up and throw them into the spiked enemies to kill both of them. You can't grab spiky enemies themselves, so on the handful of floors with only spiked enemies, we're gonna have to use items. Fortunately, items are pretty strong in this game, so all of these problem floors can be solved with one item each. Enemy defense isn't gonna be too much of a problem for us either, since we can just grind XP before doing the pit to increase our attack. This early in the game, our best experience grinding trick is gonna be to flip into 3D and do jump combos on top of this huge crowd of squiglets right here. This method will pretty quickly get us enough experience since we only need 200,000 points to be able to damage the chain chomp on floor 25 without items. There are still a few enemies that pose even more problems, infinite defense enemies. These include Schlurps, Schlorps, Dry Bones, and Dull Bones. The bones are still susceptible to items, but Schlurps and Schlorps can only be damaged by Boomer with 0 exceptions. On the 3 floors in the pit that have these enemies, you have 2 options. One, just hope you get lucky enough that they aren't the ones holding the key since they all share a floor with other enemies, or 2, use this decently precise trick to clip them out of bounds and despawn them. This trick also works on bones if you don't have items to spare for them. So as long as you have enough items, a little bit of strategy and knowledge, and some decent execution, you are able to beat the pit 100% consistently instantly with throw only. Ragtail is also, surprise, not very difficult, so we can unlock Dashel and finally continue the game. Dashel's speed is indeed enough to cross this gap with a Mario jump, and having Dashel this early is going to be very convenient for making the rest of the playthrough quicker. In this wind tower room, there's a pipe to the background where you need to hit this blue switch to reveal a door, and you're definitely supposed to use Peach's hover to get to it. However, another relatively easy speedrun trick lets us bounce off this Paragoomba at the peak of its jump to skip right to the pipe. The rest of 2-1 and all of 2-2 only really need Mario's flip as far as character abilities go, so let's skip ahead to fan favorite Chapter 2-3. Peach's hover is seemingly the intended way to cross this gap to get to where Slim is hidden, but there's a couple pretty neat workarounds. One of them is to just use Dashel, which of course we spent all that time unlocking, but you can also jump off the right side of the ledge above Slim in 3D and then land next to the chest. After getting Slim, I got the 1 million rubies and paid off all of my debt. Now, let's talk about Slim for a second. In a normal playthrough, he's pretty underwhelming. I've repeatedly talked shit about him in past videos because of how unfun and lame he is to use, but he actually gives us access to one of the most powerful glitches in all of Super Paper Mario, the ability to turn walls into recommendations. By lining up an item right next to a wall, you can use Slim, jump against the wall, land on the item, press 1 and 2 on the same frame to open the quick menu, swap to any pixel besides Slim, and then during this swap animation, you're able to press the D-pad to slide into the wall you jumped against. But lining up an item against a wall sounds like a pretty niche and limited scenario, right? Well, it would be if not for the gold bar. This item's only intended use is to be worth a lot of money, and it has no effect on enemies or anything else. If you open your inventory and use it like any other item, your character will hold it up and then toss it. The worst pixel in the game plus a seemingly cosmetic item effect equals the ability to clip into any wall in the game. Super Paper Mario math. I cannot stress enough how easy this trick is and how useful it's going to be for the rest of the run. For 2-4 though, we don't really need it since there's nothing about this chapter that requires Peach anyway. After defeating Mimi and getting the third pure heart, there's another chapter intermission where we play as another character, and this time it's Luigi. This plays out very similarly to the Peach one where we just walk and then read some dialogue and that's it, but again there was gameplay, so we'll count it. The third heart pillar only needs Mario and Slim to get to, so let's jump into chapter 3-1. The first part of this chapter is some pretty standard Super Paper Mario platforming / RPG hybrid stuff, but the Bowser fight is where things get more interesting for this challenge. The fight itself is completely free since we're still pretty over-leveled after the experience grinding and the pit, but afterwards we unlock Bowser, which gives us a second intended character we're gonna have to avoid. I did try to skip unlocking Bowser by clipping through the boundaries of the fight, but the star block to end the chapter isn't set to appear until after everything else is done. Just like with unlocking Peach, we are forced to swap to Bowser once we unlock him, but no gameplay has to be done and we can swap back. Chapter 3-2 sends us to the Tile Pool, which is overall a pretty easy and boring level. However, it contains by far the most important pixel to this challenge, even more important than Slim, Dashel, Thoreau, or anybody else. Thuddington, or as his friends call him, Thudley. Now, what could Thudley possibly do that's more overpowered than clipping into any wall in the game? Well, he can give us infinite height. By using his ground pound ability and then canceling it at the peak by pressing 1 a second time, you're able to press A exactly 4 frames later to flip into 3D. Once you flip into 3D, the game gives Mario a jump prompt like it usually does when you flip into a spot where there's no ground under you. After you jump, you can stack the same technique on itself over and over to jump forever. This is the fucking mouse-tool of a lifetime, and believe me, it's gonna help us later. Real quick, let's finish up 3-2 with the blooper fight. This fight is definitely easiest with Bowser's fire, but you can actually use Thudley to ground pound the red tentacles easily enough. 3-3 is going to be an adventure. We're tasked with climbing up the Dotwood tree, and pretty quickly we reach a glide section that even Dashel can't cross. Oh, Mr. Rat, it's time for your line. Come on, man, you're supposed to say something like, "Oh, Toodles, it's fucking Toodles time!" I finally gave you a role in one of my videos, and you threw. Anyways, It's so good. After that, getting the rest of the way up the exterior of the tree is pretty straightforward until we get to this door. Notice how it's covered with all that brown stuff? Well, it's actually not poop, but dried bark that seals the door shut. We're supposed to use our new best friend Bowser to breathe fire and burn away the bark, but fortunately we can just press down with Mario instead and use his fire breath exactly like Bowser. Okay, yeah, that's not actually a thing. I tried every manner I could think of to avoid this, from clipping in the door, to Thudley jumping to the top of the screen, to using Boomer, to even desperately trying a fire burst, but the only thing that works is Bowser's fire. So we'll have to swap over to him, burn away the bark, and then we can immediately swap back to Mario. Inside the dotwood tree, there is a whole slew of puzzles and platforming that you need to do in order to hit this switch at the top to open the door out, but rather than ponder all of the unique problems that each of these intricately designed puzzles might pose, I'm just gonna do the funny gold bar thing with Slim. This glitch is so easy that it's literally easier than doing this part the intended way. Next up is the Dimentio fight, but he's easy even if you aren't overleveled, so we'll just roll him, climb the rest of the way up, ride the red wind, and then enter the pipe to finish the level. Chapter 3-4 brings us to Fort Francis, which has a decent variety of obstacles for us to deal with. We unlock Carrie here, but honestly, if you already have Dashel, Carrie isn't quite as useful as she normally is. There's a jump or two in here that you're supposed to peach glide across, but running and jumping with Dashel and Mario is more than enough to clear them. Everything in this chapter goes exactly how you would hope until we reach the giant cat door. We can put the keys in as Mario, but nobody is allowed to enter except for Francis or totally hot babes. Everyone else simply gets kitty lasers. With this criteria in mind, I would let Mario in, but apparently the cat door has different tastes. The only way to get through this is to swap to Peach, where we're immediately forced into the funny dating sim. This is an illusion of choice cutscene, and afterwards it's time to fight Francis. We do start the fight as Peach, and I'm sure a lot of people never realize this, but you can actually just swap to whichever character you want right at the start. So we'll swap back to Mario and then take Francis to task. He's easy. On to chapter 4-1, they actually forgot to make a level in this one. All you do is unlock Squirps, then spam the 2 button while swimming through a really boring space section. You can't even use any character abilities besides Mario's flip while you have Squirps, so there is literally no reason to use anyone else. 4-2 takes us to planet Blobule, where they remembered to make a level but still forgot to make it fun. After getting the paper, we unlock Fleep, who is little more than a glorified key, only being useful to unlock things in specific scenarios designed for him. Chapter 4-3 is another weird case where they forgot to make an actual level, so let's just skip to 4-4. The Woe Zone does some heavy lifting for Chapter 4 in this game, and it's genuinely a great dungeon. Fortunately for this challenge, it most heavily makes use of Mario's 3D flip compared to other character abilities or even pixel abilities, but there are several Peach-intended gaps that we can easily cross with Dashel jumps. I swear, I'm gonna run out of things to say about these bosses pretty soon, because even when restricted to Mario only, as long as you have a normal amount of XP, combat just isn't a challenge in this game. Mr. L is cool though, and Brobot is pretty neat for the 15 seconds he gets to live. Let's slap that pure heart in the heart pillar and flop side, and then let's move on to chapter 5-1. The land of the Cragnons isn't too hard to traverse, but there is a Peach spot we need to skip as usual. Also, y'all remember this crazy block code thing where you're intended to write down a long pattern in order to open up the pipe? You can actually skip that with a gold bar clip. There isn't even any special movement once you clip through the wall. You can just hold right and pop out on the other side. So convenient. Chapter 5-2 requires us to collect the stone tablet, water tablet, and fire tablet in order to unlock Cudge and continue chasing the Floro Sapiens. The water tablet is right down here in the first room, and the stone tablet can be obtained in this room after a quick fight with O'Chunks. And I do mean quick. The fire tablet, however, poses another problem for us. In order to spawn it, you have to burn this little fire-shaped rock with Bowser. Just like with the bark door in Chapter 3, I tried every silly thing you could think of just to make sure there wasn't some stupid mechanic that nobody's ever discovered before. There isn't. So we have to swap to Bowser, burn this rock, and then we can swap back to my goat, Mario. Once we get all 3 tablets, we can straight up Cudge this block and head into 5-3, which is long and boring, but doesn't require any character abilities besides flipping. 5-4, once again, is very heavy on the 3D flip requirements, but no other character abilities. The fight against O'Cabbage is pretty much exactly like the previous Chunks fight, except he moves faster, and the King Crocus fight would actually be kind of difficult if his attack was higher. It isn't. Before continuing the story, I made sure to prep my inventory for some upcoming stuff. Mainly, I bought a bunch of life shrooms. This is very important, do not forget about this. I also upgraded my gold bars to gold bar ×3s. This doesn't really change anything about the gold bar clip, but but it is way more of a flex. Oh my god, it's chapter 6 time! As you know if you've played this game before, this is a fake out chapter where we fight about 20 samurai guys and then the world fucking ends. Character abilities aren't required here, but Mario is arguably the least optimal character to play as for these fights. He can flip into 3D to hide from the samurai guys and maybe snag some cheap hits with Boomer, but this is slow and pales in comparison to Bowser plus carry or Peach's complete invincibility when you press down. There's a Mimi fight on gate 26 during the story and it's not hard. Crazy. After that, we get to run through the destroyed Samurai Kingdom, which is much more pleasant with Dashel, and then we can fight Brobot Type L. You're never gonna guess how it went. Next, we enter by far the hardest chapter in this entire challenge. Chapter 7. It starts with Dimentio killing us and sending us to hell, and then we wake up as solo Mario with no pixels. Wait, so the part of the game where we only have Mario is the hardest part of the Mario only challenge? Well, we don't get to have solo Mario for very long because this is the part of the game where you recruit Luigi. It's always been kind of weird to me that he appears in the intro, the post chapter 2 segment, and then Luigi's just completely missing from the game from then until now, but oh well, we're forced to swap to him just like when we got the other two characters, but once again we can just swap back. Oh, yeah, that jump is definitely meant to be made with Luigi since you just unlocked him. And guess what? Our guy Thudley isn't here. Dimentio didn't have the courtesy to send all of us to hell, just some of us. We're gonna have to switch to Luigi here. Or at least we would if we hadn't brought life shrooms. Look at that, we're finally paying off the thing I mentioned in chapter 2, yes! If you die while a life shroom is in your inventory, you will be automatically revived with 5 HP. If you happen to die while you're in the air, there is actually a single frame where you're able to flip into 3D, similar to how the Thudley jump works. And also like with the Thudley jump, flipping in the air will allow you to do another jump, meaning this frame-perfect life shroom trick gives you a double jump without needing to use any pixels or any characters other than Mario. Managing to die in this room seems like a puzzle at first since there's no enemies and no external sources of damage, but of course while you're in 3D there's that little timer in the corner that ticks down and deals 1 damage to you every time it runs out. By timing a jump at the right moment when we're on 1 health, we're able to die at the peak of the jump, hit the 1 frame flip, and then jump the rest of the way up. And in case it wasn't obvious, I absolutely fucking use save states for this part. It is definitely possible to hit this trick in real time with no cheats. I mean, Thudley jumps are relatively easy to hit, but due to how long the setup can take, the complete lack of a good visual cue, and the fact that life shrooms are expensive and consumable for each attempt, this trick is considered too hard to be viable for Super Paper Mario speedruns. I'm gonna go ahead and play this back once more in real time, and I'll highlight the 1 frame where you're able to jump. Yeah, if you don't press A on that exact frame, your life shroom is consumed and you have to wait to get 1 HP and try again. Still though, it's a super neat trick, and as far as I know, the only way we can avoid using Luigi here. Next, we need to find Lovebee in order to get the pure heart back from Queen Jadis. Fortunately, this shouldn't be... God damn it. You're supposed to use Luigi once again to climb up this pipe, so that means we're gonna have to hit another life shroom jump. This one is a lot less terrible to try without save states since there's a save block right on the other side of the door, letting you reset your game to try over and over, but I already caved and did it on the first one, so who cares. This upper section is a bit of a platforming challenge / puzzle, and at first you might think we need to do another life shroom jump to skip this really tall pipe, but we can actually jump on this little ledge next to the pipes in 3D to pass all of them without any more frame-perfect bullshit. Thankfully, after finding Lovebee and talking to Jadis again, we don't need to do any more life shroom jumps and we can get sent back to Flipside to reunite with Tippy and the rest of the Pixels. Before heading back, we have another Luigi jump to skip in order to get to the Heart Pillar, but with Pixels, we have nothing to worry about. 7-2 doesn't pose any immediate problems, although there is a mandatory fight against Bowser before he rejoins our party. This fight is indeed a fight. Afterwards, Bowser for once doesn't get forced out, so we can continue Marioing all over the place. In this big exterior room where you fight the Underchomp, there's a required Luigi jump, but we have Thudley again, so we'll just do that. 7-2 wasn't so bad, but... This is the level where you have to climb a lot of clouds, re-recruit Peach, and then climb some more clouds. There are numerous Luigi-only jumps, but surely you understand the routine by now, so we're gonna skip ahead to this. This gap needs to be crossed by Princess Peach and is meant to force you to save her before you can continue. It only takes a few Thudley jumps to skip though, so we can continue the climb. Now normally right here there's a cloud guy called Cyrus that you can interact with, feed an apple to, and then bounce on to reach the end of the stage. But as an extra failsafe, he doesn't spawn until you've recovered Peach. The developers either knew that somebody would find a way to skip that gap without her, or they're just assholes. But, fun little fact about this map, despite the whole cutscene where you fly off the entire planet and then land back down, this is not a loading zone. It spawns you at the top of the same room, meaning that there's this huge amount of empty space that you could never hope to ascend under normal conditions, and you can probably see where this is going. This is known as Peach Skip in the realm of Super Paper Mario speedruns, and it's actually just a bunch of Thudley jumps in a trench coat. Fortunately, there's this random handful of clouds in this space that act like checkpoints for this trick, so you don't have to do all of them consecutively, but it does take quite a bit of practice to be able to hit Thudley jumps this consistently. In order to make up for my disgusting save state use on the life shroom jumps, and because it's fun, I decided to do this completely legit. It took me a while, but I kept focusing on practicing my button timing until I was getting jumps more often than I wasn't. Even if you do slip a bit, you can retry pretty quickly and recover, so it's not like you need to be perfect to make it. Eventually, I made it all the way up, allowing us to hit the star block and complete chapter 7-3. Upon entering 7-4, you'll notice that we still don't have Peach, but this hopefully won't be a problem for us because we can cross every gap with Thudley anyways. 7-4 is normally a pretty long level, requiring you to get 3 colored orbs from 3 different egghead guys to build a rainbow bridge across the sky. In order to start this quest, you have to unfreeze these Canadians with Bowser's Flame. This is yet another instance where there is no alternative to his flame, at least when it comes to breaking the ice. There's another more different option, and I'll give you a hint. It starts with a T and ends with a Thudley jump. Rainbow Bridge Skip only requires around 6 Thudley jumps, which is a hell of a lot easier than Peach Skip, and after all that practice, I actually managed to hit this first try. After getting across, the game continues just like if you had done everything normally, and then we're able to take on Bone Chill. With Luigi, this is normally the most disgustingly easy boss in the game, but with Mario, we actually need to use Throw to grab his ice and throw it at him, which takes longer than you'd think. I was surprised that I had to, use my brain during this boss fight at all, but it still wasn't hard by any stretch. And so that finally brings us to Chapter 8 with just a handful of required uses of characters besides Mario. And if you remember anything about this game, you know what's about to happen. The vast majority of 8-1 is completable with Mario under normal circumstances, although there is a large gap you're supposed to Peach across in order to get a key. Now, we actually still don't have Peach in our party after doing Peach Skip, but if you can do Peach Skip, then you can definitely do the 2 Thudley jumps that you need here. At the end of 8-1, there's these 5 torches on the wall, and you need to light a specific combination of them in order to reveal the staircase. As with every other burnable obstacle up to this point, we have to use Bowser here. I actually tried Thudley jumping up to the door and even clipping into the wall to see if there was any way to access this door, but I'll save you some time. There isn't. In the next room, we have to fight the final version of O-Chunks, and for story reasons, the game forces us to do it with Bowser. No matter who you enter the cutscene with, Bowser steps up to the plate and your character menu is disabled. Now at first, if you're anything like me, you might have had the clever idea to just stay as Bowser after lighting the torches and carry him all the way into this cutscene to try to count it as a single use of Bowser, but the door to O-Chunks' room is actually only enterable in 3D, forcing us to switch back to Mario, go in the door, and then be forced into Bowser for the fight. Now I'm not going to count this for the challenge, but just for fun, I decided to use cheats to re-enable Mario in the menu so we can use him for these fights that he's normally never available for. Upon defeating O-Chunks, Mario from Nintendo reassures him that there's no shame in being smacked down by a huge Studley boss. So true, King. After the forced Bowser fight and subsequent Bowser death, our party is restored and we actually get Princess Peach back here. Funnily enough though, even though 8-2 has Peach's forced final stand against Mimi, she's actually not required in the slightest to complete 8-2. They didn't even put a cheeky Peach glide gap or anything because this is the Peach section, and instead you have to deal with some Mimi shenanigans that we can skip most of with some Thudley jumps. And after that, just like with Bowser and O-Chunks, the game forces you to play as Peach and only Peach for the final Mimi encounter. Once again, we'll cheat Mario back in for fun run, and honestly he makes this fight a fair bit harder. Mimi's hitbox is pretty unforgiving, but Mario has a secret trick here that you would otherwise never notice under normal gameplay. Flipping into 3D while she uses her spinning wheel of death attack will make her bounce back and forth in the other direction and immediately end that attack phase. It's very interesting that her moving in 3D like this is accounted for at all, since you can't fight this form of her with Mario normally. Unlike the first two chapters that barely use their respective characters, you're supposed to use Luigi a lot during chapter 8-3. Luckily though, Luigi's special ability is only to jump really high, and we have a special friend that lets us do that with Mario, so even this weird room where you have to follow the path on the wall in 3D is doable with Mario only. Upon reaching Dimentio's chamber, he forces us to do this tedious recap chase, but since we don't have Peach and Bowser, it is already designed to take us to places that are Mario friendly. No hurdles here, and then we get swapped to Luigi for this Dimentio fight. And again, let's cheat Mario in and fight him this way instead. This makes the fight way more fun and engaging since you can't just spam him with Luigi's super jump anymore. It's not hard still, but it is more fun. And so, Luigi is removed from our party after defeating Dimentio, leaving us with just Mario for 8-4. If we don't have any other characters, it's gonna be pretty difficult to switch to other characters. 8-4 is a decent final level, but honestly it's kinda short, and then we arrive at the final boss. First we gotta fight Count Bleck, who is invincible at first, but what? The other characters are alive? Their powers combine to shatter Count Bleck's force field, and now we can hit him. The game keeps us playing as Mario so we can take on Count Bleck for real with our favorite guy. This fight isn't even way too easy, it's just kind of too easy, so I'm able to kill him in like a minute or two. Time for the real final boss now. Dimentio steps up, joins with Luigi from Nintendo, and becomes a gigantic, even sexier Tumbler Man. There's a fake out invincibility phase again, some heartwarming stuff happens, and then Mario can take on Super Dimentio in the true final battle of Super Paper Mario. For some reason, they forgot to make this guy do a notable amount of damage, so after carelessly spamming jumps at him, I completely rolled him and it wasn't close. And so, as we mash through all of the ending dialogue, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this challenge. It was definitely a really arbitrary one, but I think it showed off so many cool and obscure tricks in Super Paper Mario, and I had so much fun solving this run as best I could. I think it's awesome that this was a challenge that affected puzzle solving and exploration rather than combat, since we already found a way to make Super Paper Mario plenty hard with the last full game challenge run I did. So if you made it all the way here and you aren't subscribed, then either you're really hard to please or you forgore. While you're at it, make sure you like and comment, since interactions are really important for growing a channel. Huge shoutouts as always to the legion of Bringle members for keeping this channel afloat. Honestly, y'all rock. Anyways, this is the end of the video, so take care and I will see you next time.